This is Steve Zeltzer, and I'm with Ovidia Molina. She's president of the Texas State Teachers Association. And your union and your members have faced a dire situation in Texas. So thanks for joining us. First of all, let's talk about the recent catastrophe, really, massacre of Uvalde. How has that affected the teachers there and the teachers in Texas in general?
It has really hit all of our educators really hard. Just the reminder that doing what you love to do, teaching and being around our students can get you killed. The reminder that our students aren't safe in our campuses. The job is just getting harder, no matter whether you're in the classroom, in the hallways, the buses, the cafeteria. All of our school employees are feeling a sense of questioning how much longer they can stay in education.
And this is coming off of the COVID pandemic, which is still running rampant in this country. And how did that affect the teachers of the education system in Texas?
Here in Texas, we had to fight to keep our educators and our students safe. It was a local fight at every level. Our governor said that we were having mask mandates, and he was not going to have mask mandates. And he used that word so that people would get angry at educators for wanting to keep everybody safe. And that has pretty much been how these last couple of years have progressed. One attack after another. So COVID, we did not want mandates. We wanted the ability to have masks required in certain areas when they were needed because COVID cases were high. And we knew that when we were virtual, of course, our students weren't going to be getting sick because they weren't all together. But once our schools opened, you were going to have people that had been in bubbles, and now everybody was going to get together. And the governor was still attacking us, trying to make it seem like we were doing something wrong when we just wanted to make sure that everybody was safe. Because the other thing that frustrated us was that we were hoping for a plan for educators and students in the community to bring us back safely and keep us safely. That was the goal, because we knew that there had already been a disruption for our students and our educators. And if we went back too soon without protocols, there would be more disruptions because people would get sick. But it just didn't make sense to our governor.
And this attack on science, saying that you should not have masks in the classrooms. I mean, it must have been horrifying to teachers who have maybe vulnerability, who have illnesses and possible dangers, and their families becoming contaminated. It must have been a very difficult situation for many, many teachers in Texas, and for that matter, all around the country.
Definitely. As educators, we're always trying to ensure that we're taking care of others, definitely our students and their families, and making sure that they're feeling safe. And so our questioning wasn't just, I need to wear a mask to stay safe for my students so that they have a constant, but also what if my family member, as you mentioned, has something that I don't want to bring home? I don't want to be the cause of making somebody ill in my family or killing them. And that was the decisions that we were having to make. And then also speaking about our students and their families. If I know that I have a student that is immunocompromised or a family member of theirs is immunocompromised, and having the decision of wearing a mask or no wearing a mask, it just creates chaos in our schools instead of just having one rule that everybody follows and nobody feels different. Nobody feels like they're going to be made fun of or be talked about because they're trying to be safe for themselves or their family.
And billions of dollars were passed by the U.S. Congress, the government, for ventilation, to protect our schools, to protect our transit systems. Was that money spent at Uvalde and other schools to protect these schools?
Well, here's the thing. In Texas, our school districts have somewhat local control, except for when the governor does not allow that to happen. And so the funding for ventilation and safety protocols would be district by district. And that's another thing that sort of frustrates people when they talk about education here in Texas, because there is no one rule for everybody, because every school district has a local board and makes decisions unless the governor mandates something, requires something, then we have to have fights like the masks, where actually our school boards had to stand up to the governor. And so there was no clear guidance from TEA aside from this is what is available. But the reality is that the federal government had to give us funding, and our state government didn't even think about it, didn't even want to fully fund our schools. We're woefully underfunded in Texas, but that didn't have any kind of reaction from the governor either.
And the issue of Latinos in education, Blacks, is there a disparity in treatment of education? Because I know what's happened in Uvalde with the Robb school. They said the doors weren't working. They blamed a teacher for leaving a door open. I mean, it really is unbelievable. I mean, trying to blame a teacher for letting the shooter in.
Right. It's ridiculous how fast fingers started pointing back to our educators, back to our schools, when you haven't done everything to support us, right? Instead of talking about how we can help society and the community from coming and attacking our schools, it was the school's fault for not being ready for an attack. And it just blows my mind how it becomes a problem of the school again. We didn't do enough. It's always we need to do more, we need to do more, but the governor is not helping us when it comes to a safety issue. Right now, when he's talking about Uvalde, he's sitting there talking about everything's going to be on the table, but not everything is on the table when he's talking about safety. And so it's, if our schools were fully funded and we could say, we're getting all the money we need for upkeep, for staffing, to make sure that our class sizes were smaller, then I would give some credit to the governor. But that's not what's happening in Texas. So yes, where you live, your zip code, because our schools are funded by taxes, housing, property taxes, depending on where you live, your house would be worth $1 million or 2,000 just because same house, you just live in a different part of the state.
So what are the results of that? Because I know that even for mental health funding, the governor cut that to use for border, supposedly border protection. I mean, this is a town that's next to the border. A large number of workers in the town work for border police or police. I mean, it seems like you can't even protect the town, but it's not the immigrants, but right here inside our own country.
It's disheartening how it became everything else except the governor, except the legislature, except the people that actually have power to do something. The inaction after the Santa Fe shooting, the inaction after the El Paso shooting, and countless others resulted in this. We are so angry that our students couldn't survive going to school. They had 2 more days left to survive going to school. And this is how we have to talk about education in Texas, because everything is so unsafe. And for the governor to come in and attack the educators who are just trying to love our students and make sure that we are making up for the inequalities that our systems have set up. He's not coming after churches that somebody might have propped the door, somebody might have let somebody in. He's not coming after movie theaters. He's not coming after parks. He's not coming after all these other places that have had shootings. He's coming after us again.
And the solution for, it seems, the governor and people who support more guns is to arm and train teachers. I mean, this shooter apparently got this gun. He was worked at a fast food restaurant from the Daniels Defense, and they have a loan program for people to buy guns, to borrow money to buy these guns, which cost a couple of $1,000s. This idea of arming teachers to protect the students. I mean, first of all, you already have a job teaching, but then to do something, to train you to be an armed guard. I mean, what is that? What is the effect of that on teachers at this point, who are afraid themselves about the conditions they're trying to survive? with the lack of proper funding.
It, it, it talks about the disconnect between the governor, the lieutenant governor, Senator Cruz, all those people that just jump to the, we need to arm our teachers. We need to arm, and they just keep saying teachers, right? Well, are they going to be arming educators? Is the hall monitor going to have a gun? Are the bus drivers going to have guns? The cafeteria people, so it's just insane. When they talk about arming teachers, they don't understand what teachers do. They don't understand that we have to build a relationship with our students. And I think me having a gun on my side, on my desk, somewhere, is going to create some kind of barrier. But also, many of these shooters have been former students or students. And as a teacher, I make a connection with that, with students, whether you see them in the hall or not. How am I expected to react and try to shoot somebody that I know, that I possibly care about, while at the same time, and not hurt anybody else, while at the same time making sure that I'm taking care of my students that are in my classroom, make sure they're not being harmed, making sure that I lock the doors, making sure that my coworkers are okay. And where am I going to have this weapon when I'm not needing to use it? How am I going to keep it safe? I'm a middle school teacher by trade. Middle schoolers want to see everything. Elementary school kids, I'm sure, are the same. How is the gun going to be kept safe from my students that are not trying to shoot us up on a regular day? Every idea that has come out after Uvalde is just educators need to do more. Educators need to do more. It's just another attack on our profession, and not understanding the threat is coming from outside. Help us so that the threat doesn't come into our schools.
And the issue of COVID created a tremendous stress for the students, the families, the teachers, the staff, and now the gun thing. I mean, what is the situation with counselors or mental health? I mean, it seems like this is a very critical issue to protect the children, to protect everyone in the school system.
And just like the COVID response, where we were an afterthought, there was no real plan to keep us safe in school. There is no real plan for mental health in our communities. There is always a call for thoughts and prayers, and we're going to do more with mental health. But the reality is it doesn't happen. Instead of talking about what our community needs after a tragedy, we want to see it done before. We want these services to be there so that we don't get tragedies like this. We advocate for community schools that are truly the hub of the community, that can offer services not just to the student, but to their families. Texas doesn't have that many of them. We want to ensure that our students have smaller class sizes so that the teacher and the support professionals that are in the room can actually interact with the students and see what's going on, because we know that everything that happens outside of school, our children bring in to the school, right? We want to have counselors that can actually counsel students and not be worried about proctoring or make sure that there's testing materials that are safeguarded. Our counselors have hundreds of students that they're supposed to see in a year, because we don't have the right ratio of counselors to students in schools, especially when you talk about our larger schools. All this needs to be looked at, but the governor isn't looking at all that. The governor is looking at arming us. The governor is looking at making sure that we have surprise attacks, so that we're ready. And they keep calling them audits, but the right word is attacks. They want to have surprise attacks on our schools so that students and educators are ready. What he's doing is causing more trauma.
And I mean, it sounds like turning the schools into a prison atmosphere with barricades and fences and monitors. Is this what is going to happen to the schools with the militarization, it seems, of the schools with that agenda?
That's exactly it. It's again, not what educators want, not what families want for their students. We want our students to come to school happy. We want our students to want to come to school. it's heartbreaking to hear so many students fearful of going back in the fall. I've heard many educators talk about how their students are asking if they're going to be okay. Educators telling their students that they would take a bullet for them. Families that are don't know what to do, how to answer the questions. And this happened and our kids left us, right? They went on summer break. And so we don't have that constant with them to reassure them that schools are safe, that schools are fun, that you are protected, that the adults love you, and we're doing something about it. Because the reality is, governor's not doing anything about it.
And the issue of funding for public education is a very serious issue. Even in California, where we're from, we're 36th in the country. And this is a state with 180 billionaires, 70 billionaires, more than 70 billionaires in San Francisco alone. And now in Texas, with the price of gas, the wealth in Texas with these companies, these gas companies, where is that wealth going? I mean, it seems like that, as you say, property taxes, working people are paying if they own a home for taxes. Where's the effort to make the people who have the wealth pay for a good, great education in Texas?
I would like to know that answer as well. Where is the priority? Where, majority of our students go to public schools. We have over 5 million students in Texas that go to public schools, and our governor is not prioritizing. He talks about being number one for getting more jobs. He talks about being number one for, it's always the economy, but he doesn't understand or doesn't want to understand that our schools are connected to his economy. Because when we were virtual and he was trying to get us to open so that people could go back to work, he wasn't treating us as professionals. He was just worried about making sure that people were happy with him. It's a campaign year. And what he's doing is campaigning. What he's doing is doing things for his base instead of actually doing what Texans need him to do. Instead of looking at the future of Texas, instead of making sure that education is a priority, he's not right for Texas.
And there's also the issue of privatization. The Supreme Court may rule in favor of vouchers to public funding of religious schools. It seems like there's a restructuring of education going on, or an effort to restructure education to get rid of public education as we know it. Is this a threat in Texas?
Oh, that's very, very alive in Texas. Our rural representatives, mostly Republicans, have actually been against vouchers. And Lieutenant Governor and Governor want to revive it, even though Texans have voted overwhelmingly against vouchers because it's not going to help everybody. And our rural Republicans are actually the ones that have stopped it past because they know that it's not going to benefit them because charters aren't going to go into the rural communities. It's just going to take money away from them. And so here he is attacking our public school funds. He just came out and said that there was money found to allow more charter schools. It will not be taken away from our fully funded public schools. And I made sure to note that that was a lie. He cannot say that it will not take away from our fully funded public schools because we are not fully funded. And for him to come out with, we have money for charter schools, why isn't that money available for our public schools? So yes, he's attacking our public schools. He's trying to make them private, and that does not help our majority of our students.
And this ideology of charter schools, I mean, it's created, it has in California a two-tier public education system. They're closing in Oakland, they're closing public schools in the Black and brown community and opening charter schools or expanding charter schools funded by billionaires. Mm-hmm. It seems like the whole drive is to really pit public schools against charter schools and then allow charter schools to flourish or to develop in California and throughout the country.
It's making education a business. They see our students as dollars. And we don't see them as that. And that's the problem. They're trying to make a profit off of our students. And you're right, the schools that are closing are the schools of children of color, the lower socioeconomic status, and it's communities that are also having a difficult time getting out to vote. The ability to vote in Texas has been really reduced because times are different. You have to have certain things to be able to vote, your IDs. There have been many barriers put into voting. And so the communities that are highly affected cannot show up, not even mentioning gerrymandering, but our communities that are being affected by all of these attacks on education cannot vote because they can't get off work. They have children that have to be taken care of, so they can't bring the whole family to vote. Instead of making it easier for people to participate in our democracy, they've made it harder so that only a certain group of people vote, and therefore only a certain group of people get rewarded for the people that are elected.
And the future of public education, the future of democracy, it seems is on the agenda. What is going to happen? What do you think the response has been? The unions, the education unions, the other unions to defend it, and the right of unions, even in Texas. I know is not a right to work state. What does it mean for a teacher who wants to get organized in Texas? How is that difficult?
So our members have to be very vocal at the local level. We support our local association. So we have, and that's the other thing, is we have to have locals in every school district. So there's not a blanket by region, not a blanket for the whole state. Well, we have to work at the local level, at the school board level, in every single school district. And to ensure that we are asking for not just salaries and benefits to try to make it to the average, because we're below average for the national, but also to ensure that we are getting funding for our students, that programs that will benefit our students are thought of. So as locals, they advocate for that, but through the whole state, we're all trying to get the community involved in voting education first and ensuring that people understand the connection between who we vote for and what gets funded. And Uvalde has really angered a lot of people. The hurt of hearing about the tragedy, about the massacre, is not going away. Though the governor wants to pretend that he's doing something about it, people aren't buying it. We're tired. And so we have a lot of people that are now understanding a little bit more how we support educators and our students is by electing people that will support them. And so our Vote Education First campaign at the state level, regional level, and local level has gained traction.
The school in Uvalde, Robb, actually has an important history in the fight against segregation in Texas. And that history is unknown. I know nationally, it hasn't been talked about in the national press, but this effort to critical race theory to say we shouldn't talk about our own history of fighting against segregation at Uvalde, what happened there? I mean, is this attack on history, not letting people know about their own history, part of this ideological campaign to deny what's really the reality of this country?
Definitely. We in K-12 do not teach critical race theory. What we do ensure that our students feel loved, are seen, that their culture comes in, because like I said, everything that happens to them outside of school comes into our schools. And why not talk about the positives? Why not talk about where you're from? Why not get to know each other and make sure that we understand where everybody's coming from? That's what I think it makes some leaders, so-called leaders, fearful, because our students want to have all of their culture, all of their identity seen. And if we have more people that want to participate and want to be seen, then they may not be in power for much longer, because they will become voting adults who start to wonder why it is that they're not seen in our education. Why it is that it's so hard, why educators are getting attacked, why things aren't getting funded, because it's getting harder to hide what it is that they're doing, because they're doing it so often.
And nationally, these Trump and these forces have attacked the AFT, the NEA, blame the teachers, or they're angry about the political power of teachers in this country, and they've tried to shut them up. What are they afraid of, number one? And have teachers rally together nationally to defend public education, to stop these massacres, to oppose the militarization of the schools. I mean, the military, it seems that's the solution,
Right.
military around the world, military here. I mean, it seems like that's the agenda in this country.
I think that all of the attacks have made it to where our educators are so fed up of being attacked that they're no longer remaining quiet. As educators, we like to stay behind the scenes. We want to push our students and everybody else to the front to make sure that they shine. But many more are understanding now that we can't be quiet. The attacks on us were one thing, but the constant tragedies that we have to explain to our students, the constant fear of when will it be my school, have created a sort of release of the fear. We have to be vocal. We have to be vocal because we want to make sure that we save our students. And that has been a unifying cry from educators.
So
The
that's
time
a
is
matter
now.
of survival, actually survival for teachers, students, the school system.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much for joining us. We've been talking with Ovidia Molina. She's the president of the Texas State Teachers Association, about the traumatic and horrifying situation facing teachers, students, their families, and this recent massacre in Uvalde. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.